Trumpcast is brought to you by Boll & Branch. For luxury bedding at a low price, go to bollandbranch.com and use the promo code TrumpCast to get $50 off your first set of sheets.
The following podcast contains explicit language.
You retweeted an unflattering picture of her next to a picture of your wife.
I didn't start it.
Oh, but that's,
I didn't start
sir,
it.
with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old.
Anytime he gets upset, anytime he gets threatened, anytime he gets scared, he begins yelling, he begins often cursing.
Hello and welcome to Trumpcast, the show about the man who boasted last night about getting the Mexican finance minister fired for arranging a meeting with him, Donald Trump. I'm Jacob Weisberg. So we had a kind of test drive for the debates last night when NBC News hosted a commander-in-chief forum in front of an audience of veterans. Matt Lauer interviewed them in sequence and then took questions from the audience. In Slate, Will Salatin called Trump's half of the show an authoritarian farce. Trump repeated some of his favorite lies, like his claim that he opposed the Iraq War. And Matt Lauer got universally terrible reviews for failing to call Trump out on that. Trump professed his admiration for Vladimir Putin as a strong leader, again. He said we should have stolen Iraq's oil, again. And he said he had a secret plan to defeat ISIS, again. What game is Trump playing here? Why is he pretending he has a plan for dealing with ISIS when he obviously doesn't? My guest today thinks there's a better way to understand Trump's maneuvering. Think simple. Think stupid. I'll be back with him right after we do the tweets.
Just heard that crazy and very dumb at Morning Micah had a mental breakdown while talking about me on the low ratings at Morning Joe. Joe, a mess. Mainstream media never covered Hillary's massive hacking or coughing attack, yet it is #1 trending. What's up? Thank you to our fantastic veterans. The reviews and polls from almost everyone of my Commander-in-Chief presentation were great. Nice. Hillary just gave a disastrous news conference on the tarmac to make up for poor performance last night. She's being decimated by the media. Hillary Clinton answered email questions differently last night than she has in the past. She is totally confused, unfit to serve as POTUS.
Trumpcast is brought to you today by Boll & Branch. You know, you just sleep a lot better when you love your sheets. And great sheets aren't about the high thread count, and they're not about how much they cost. Getting a great night's sleep is more affordable than you might think. You don't need a new expensive mattress or sleeping pills. You just need to change your sheets. And that's why you should check out Boll & Branch. Everything Boll & Branch makes, from bedding to blankets, is made from pure 100% organic cotton, which means they're super soft. And they don't mess around with middlemen. You buy directly from them, so you're essentially paying wholesale prices. Luxury sheets can cost $1,000 in some stores, but not at Boll & Branch. They're only a couple of $100, and they're worth it. Everyone who tries Boll & Branch sheets loves them. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews. And Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and Fast Company are all talking about Boll & Branch. I'm even told that 3 U.S. presidents sleep on Boll & Branch sheets, although presumably not the same Boll & Branch sheets. Shipping is free, and you can try them for 30 nights. If you don't love them, send them back for a refund. But I doubt you'll want to send them back. There's no risk and no reason not to give them a try. To get you started right now, our listeners get $50 off your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com if you use the promo code TrumpCast. Go to bollandbranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets. That's BOLL and branch.com. Promo code TrumpCast. My guest today is Josh Marshall. He's the editor and publisher of Talking Points Memo, which has been essential reading during this election cycle. Josh, welcome to Trumpcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I got to start with what just happened. Last night, Trump was on this NBC, MSNBC thing they called a commander-in-chief forum, where he was sort of interviewed by Matt Lauer. And it was kind of crazy, right? Tell me what happened.
Well, Lauer talked to Hillary, and it was pretty standard. There was a lot of talk about the emails, and then people either were satisfied with the email conversation or they weren't. And then you went to Trump, and it was just sort of a surreal sort of thing. And a lot of the chatter among journalists on Twitter last night was that Lauer was a disaster and he hadn't fact-checked Trump enough and he'd been too hard on Hillary or overemphasized the emails. I kind of have a contrary view of this. I did not think he did great, but I think he was actually sort of like a Trump whisperer in a way that I think people didn't fully get a sense of. He enabled Trump's nonsense, and he did let Trump be Trump. But letting Trump be Trump was like a disaster for Trump because he just, unless you are a hardcore Trump supporter, I think it was pretty hard to watch that and not think this guy just is just winging it and making stuff up, and he has no idea what he's talking about.
Well, Josh, let's talk a little bit about what Trump actually said. So part of the conversation was about his alleged secret plan to deal with ISIS, and Lauer seems like a lot of us not to believe there really is a secret plan. It's sort of a secret plan to get a plan.
Yeah, well, I thought that was, again, another example where Lauer was a little better at this than people have given him credit for, because Trump has been saying for weeks that there's a secret plan, and no one's really believed this. Like, how would Trump even know how to formulate a plan? But a day or so ago, he said that his plan is actually to ask his generals for a plan. So Lauer, again, in this kind of passive and easygoing way, kind of says, so is your secret plan to ask someone else for a plan? And at that point, it's sort of obvious Trump is just caught. He has no secret plan, and he has revealed that he has no secret plan. But he is cocky enough and arrogant enough that he just starts chattering. And on the surface, he's talking about he's got a secret plan, but he's going to see what the generals come up with their plan, and he may end up combining the two plans. But when you listen, you sort of listen to the meta conversation. He's caught out saying something stupid. So it's sort of like, you tell the teacher the dog ate your homework, and the teacher shoots back, but you have no dog.
Right.
And then you just start talking, and it's because you don't want to admit you've been caught. And that was my sense of that whole interaction. It was just ridiculous.
He also said, I thought this was amazing, that in my classified security briefing, which he actually got in August, he said, my briefer said Obama doesn't follow most of their advice. He's not supposed to talk about it, but they obviously can't challenge him because they're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I actually was I want to try to find out whether the terms of the briefings actually prevent you from making false claims about the briefings. I mean, again, it's such a weird edge case.
It's such an outrageous thing to be doing anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not sure they thought about that one, like where you just make something crazy up and say it. I think the thing is, though, is that even if you think Obama has been a disaster and is weak and is leading from behind and all that kind of stuff, unless you're really nuts, the briefers are not going to badmouth the president to Trump. That's not going to happen. So again, I don't think maybe Lauer should have jumped in and fact-checked him or attacked him or something. But I think Trump kind of hanged himself with his own words on that. That's just nonsense.
What I'd like to hear is whether the briefers actually got a word in the briefing. I mean, I assume it was 95% him talking, much as he was blustering last night. And then he said, in Iraq, I was against it all along, which isn't true. But we should take their oil while we're there because, as he said, to the victor goes the spoils, I assume he also means to the loser goes the spoils. I mean, this is just a defense of plundering the wealth of this country to which we have done tremendous additional damage already.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something of an understatement to say there's an international law problem with what he's proposing. But to me, I mean, look, international law is not the biggest factor in American elections, but I think the bigger thing is just, what does that mean to take the oil? It's not like their supply of gold that maybe you could just literally take and bring back to America. It's like a whole geological formation under the ground. So that's like ridiculous. And then he sort of says, well, we're just going to kind of hold on to the oil part.
That part. The oil part,
exactly.
The oily part.
Yeah, exactly. But again, there's a lot of oil parts, and that makes, I mean, think about that. So we're going to have 30 or 40 like tiny isolated oil cantons, basically, like all protected by the military. That's just, again, I don't think international law has a lot of traction in U.S. elections. But I think people know when they hear something that just makes no sense at all. And that just, again, that's just ridiculous.
Josh, on Talking Points Memo, you've been playing with this concept I think you call Trump's razor, which I love. Explain what Trump's razor is.
Well, Trump's razor is the heuristic principle that whenever you are dealing with Trump, whenever there is a question about what Trump is doing or what is going to happen or something like that, you come up with the stupidest possible scenario that you can reconcile with the facts that you know, and that will probably be true. So that is Trump's razor. And I came up with the principle, but it was actually it's funny, there's a very prominent science fiction writer that people may know about. His name's John Scalzi. And I actually went to high school with John, so we know each other from 30 years ago. So he came up with the name, but that's Trump's razor. And I think it's one of these, my late father was a scientist. And so I've always sort of prided myself on empiricism. And I think Trump's razor is the concept is ridiculous. It makes no sense at all. And yet there's no way I can explain why it's true or makes sense or anything like that. But empiricism, it actually is highly predictive. If you do this, it will bring you where you need to go. And why that is the case, I have no idea. Again, there's empiricism is about following observed experience. So that's what Trump's razor is.
Right. Well, Occam's razor, which this comes from, is like this concept in philosophy that says if you have multiple possible explanations, you go with the simplest. And that actually has really, I mean, there's a version of that, obviously, but it really makes sense. I mean, because people say this is a brilliant, devious plan by Donald Trump to do X. And you say, no, it's not. It's his insecurity and vanity. It's his blustering. And that explanation is always not only simpler, but almost always better than the idea that there's some complicated thing.
Yeah, and in many cases, we find out 3 or 4 days later that it's not only a satisfying explanation, it is in most cases a validated explanation. Because if you think about, how did X happen, and you say, well, what is the bank shot, strategery, 11-dimensional chess idea, but what is the stupidest possible path that we got to this? And when you find that, and again, it's bounded at some level, it has to be reconciled with the facts we know, but within that factual framework, whatever is the stupidest explanation, we'll find out in a week that is true. And it has not led me wrong yet.
So apply Trump's razor to Trump saying last night that Putin is a stronger and better leader than Obama, and to his sucking up to Putin generally.
There's obviously this whole question about financial ties to people around Putin and hacking and all these kind of very ungainly ideas. I think it is that Putin said things that are nice about him, and people do what Putin says, and Trump is gratified to be praised, and that's it.
Excellent. You're exactly right. All right, one more. Let's apply Trump's razor to Trump's surprise trip to Mexico and to his bragging last night that he got the Mexican finance minister fired.
That was one of the most bizarre things, because that you would not think that was like a sign of great success. The guy who invited you was fired, right?
Yeah. And now who are you going to call next for a meeting?
Exactly. I think Trump's razor tells us in that case that Trump began the sentence without thinking through the end of the sentence and just got there. And the fact that it made no sense was he literally had not thought through 5 words in advance. So Trump's razor tells us that even Trump doesn't think that makes any sense at all, but he didn't think 5 words ahead.
What are some other, apply Trump's razor to Melania's plagiarized speech at the convention?
Well, this was actually a test case. We don't have to apply it. We actually see that when that story first broke, everybody thought, wow, the speechwriter really screwed her, right? She's been embarrassed. Someone really let her down. Some head needs to roll. And I remember talking about it with my staff, what's the stupidest thing that could have happened here? The stupidest thing that could have happened is Melania wrote the speech, and she plagiarized it herself. And in fact, that's pretty much what happened.
She moved stuff around on her computer. She saw something she liked. Yeah,
exactly. And she's working with some other Trump lackey, and she likes these parts of Michelle's speech. So she actually basically wrote the speech herself with help of some non-speech writer. So again, this is almost like the problem. I'm glad you brought this up, because this is like the perfect Trump's razor explanation. What is the logical explanation is the speechwriter got lazy and did something terrible and embarrassed this woman in this, the most kind of important night of her life, probably. But what's the stupidest thing that could have happened? Trump's wife, who's never written a speech before, in this highly consequential moment, wrote her own speech and plagiarized from the current first lady. I mean, that is definitely the stupidest possible thing you could possibly imagine, and that's pretty much what it ended up being. So this is why Trump's razor actually is on the par with Occam's razor as a heuristic device. And I don't think I'm glad you're bringing it up, because I don't think it's quite gotten even with some currency that it's gotten, it hasn't gotten quite the respect that it deserves, because it is a very powerful way of understanding an important political phenomenon in our national life. The problem with Trump's razor is it's going to make everyone as good a pundit as Josh Marshall. It is kind of true. It's sort of like I've open sourced the basis of my insights into Trump, but I'm that kind of guy. I'm not going to hoard it. Josh, it's great talking to you. Thanks for joining me on the show today. Thanks for having me. That's it for today's show. Trumpcast was produced by Jason DeLeon, who has a secret plan to overthrow Steve Lickteig, the executive producer of Slate Podcasts. What Jason doesn't know is that Steve has a secret plan to overthrow Andy Bowers, our chief content officer. Andy Bowers has a secret plan to overthrow me. John D. Domenico is our voice of Donald Trump. He has a secret plan to get Trump elected and do his impression for 8 years. Thanks for listening to Trumpcast.
The polls are close. So Crooked Hillary is getting out of bed and will campaign tomorrow. Why did she hammer 13 devices and acid wash emails?
In every city,
she encouraged them to enjoy what she called the cheerful hurly-burly of city life.
In every town.
And now we've just been around long enough, and the town looks so much better.
There are people who want to change things.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so cool. Why can't we do that in my community and other communities everywhere?
To make them better.
My point to them is it can be better. It can be better than that. It'll be different.
Or to protect things from getting worse.
If you're a responsible person, you have to oppose things that are dumped right on your neighborhood, right in an area that you know about.
I'm Rebecca Shear, inviting you to check out Placemakers, the podcast from Slate Magazine about the spaces we inhabit and the people who shape them. Subscribe now to Placemakers. You'll never look at your community the same way again.